Hey guys, thanks for joining us here at Salty Ginger Talk. If you're a returning listener, it's great to have you back. New to the channel, really glad you joined us. Hope you like what you hear. So we have a great lady coming on tonight. Her name is Mimi Tallow. She has lived a super interesting life. She's written several books. She hosts her own podcast. She's going to come on and tell us about her experiences, what she's learned, and I think you're going to really, really enjoy the interview. And she's got a great personality. She's a great storyteller and just full of energy and really excited to bring her on the podcast. So let's do that right now. So, Mimi, thank you so much for joining us here at Salty Ginger Talk tonight.
I'm thrilled to be here. Didn't that sound sincere?
It sounded very sincere. Yes, good job. You're in sales for a living, right?
I sort of.
well,
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 I
yeah. I was going to say we'll get into all that because you've got rich background of life experience on which you draw from, and you've written a book about. And so we were excited to bring you on to the program tonight because we want to talk about all of those things that you've experienced and the life lessons you're able to impart to our listeners from those. As you know from our first conversation, our podcast is entirely about people living a purposeful life, and they get to choose whatever that purpose is. We're not here to tell you how or what you should focus on. We
right,
are saying you should focus on something that's important to you and you should get after it intentionally. And
exactly.
that's what we try to encourage people to do. And I think your story and the lessons that you're able to impart kind of feed perfectly into that. So, what we usually do is have our guest walk us through their life at kind of a high level. And if you want to start as a kid, fine. If you want to start as an adult, fine. It's your show. You get to do what you want. But then
Mhm.
we go back and say, okay, so this happened. What did you learn? How did that take place? We get into the deep dive after
Yeah,
you kind of do a broad overview. So, with all that said,
yeah.
I turn it over to you to tell us about yourself. Tell us all about your life, Mimi.
I'll do the Reader's Digest first,
There you go.
and then we'll walk back.
We'll do the War and Peace version after that.
Yes. I was born in Scranton, Pennsylvania, which at one time was a very important, very booming town for politicians and gangsters.
Mm,
Um, One of the first places to have railroad and all kinds of things back, way back. Anyway, so the town was an exciting town. I grew up in the 60s. My parents were the worst parents you could ever imagine. No, Ozzie and Harriet for your older listeners. My father's an alcoholic, and my mother was, I think, a narcissist. She never kissed me or hugged me, nothing. So, with that being said, um, I managed. I managed. I was very good at school, and I was blessed that I was living across the street from a library, so that was an escape.
mm,
And you talked about having a purpose in life. I always wanted to be a teacher, specifically an English teacher. And my parents waited until graduation day in high school to tell me that wasn't going to happen no matter what. Even if I tried to work my way through, they needed me to stay home and make money for the family. So I was trapped. I was in a trap. So as per usual, for a woman in the 60s, the only way out was marriage. And I did love the man, but he was an alcoholic. He was very damaged. Didn't last too long. Then I went out on my own and I liked it, but my clock was ticking and I wanted to have children. And while I was single in the 70s, I had a great time, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And I was a bartender. So you can only imagine the fun I had.
mm.
Um, I made the mistake of dating a lot of musicians. They're not the best catch. Anyway, if you want commitment, do not date a musician. So finally, the clock was ticking, and I was dating someone in the mafia, and he was married, and he hired someone to be my bodyguard. I know it sounds like a movie, but there was a movie called The Bodyguard. And I got off work at 2 in the morning, and he didn't like that. So he had this guy come and walk me over to the after hours bar, you know. And after a few weeks, I got this awful phone call from someone saying, if you keep dating Joe so and so, you're going to find yourself dead in the street. So I stopped dating Joe so and so. So my bodyguard, though, he didn't quit. He continued because he had fallen in love with me. As you could say, I am a very lovable person.
Clearly.
And at first, when he asked me out, I said, no, you're not my type, whatever. I said, I don't like the way you wear your hair. I don't like your clothes. I don't like. Well, this guy went and he changed his hairstyle. He changed the way he dressed. He did everything. And I started to date him, and he wined and dined me at the best places and wooed me. And like I said, I wanted babies. I wanted to get married. I was like 25, which at that time, oh God, you're not married yet. You don't have babies. So we got married, and the truth came out about him. He wasn't an alcoholic, but he imagined himself to be a professional gambler. He imagined himself. He was a con man. Unfortunately, he wasn't very good at it, and he brought no money into the house. I had 2 children very quickly, 18 months apart, 2 lovely little girls. He was very jealous, though, and would not let me work or anything to bring money into the house. So I was on welfare, and he was never home because he'd be out all night in these gambling situations, whatever he's doing. I go into that in the book in more detail, the type of cons that he was involved in. And when he would come home, he'd go to sleep. So I basically was a 24-hour single mom, So I got tired. I lasted 7 years, and I thought, no, tried marriage counseling, the whole banana. So I got divorced, and he did not recognize the divorce. What I mean by that is I was divorced, but he wasn't. I was still his wife in his mind.
Gotcha.
So I was not allowed to live as a single woman. And what I did was I went to college, what I always wanted to do. I put myself through college with 2 little girls on welfare, and God bless the government because they paid my tuition. And that's how I was able to do that, and food stamps, etc. But meantime, I have this gorilla, and he was a big guy. I mean, he was a bodyguard, He used to collect for the mafia, like the bookies.
Sure.
Money. He was a collector. So he would come on campus and bully me. He tried to run me over with his car once on the quad. I mean, it was a nightmare. So after a couple of years of just going through hell, like him acting like I was a cheating wife and me trying to have a life, yes, that did rhyme. And I tried everything, including moving away. I actually went to Chambersburg. There was a college there that's near Harrisburg. However, with my wonderful luck, while I was there, 3 Mile Island happened. And 3 Mile Island was right between Shippensburg and Harrisburg, and that's where I was.
Yep.
So and the college professors went on strike at the same time. So I'm like, what? So I had to move home to Scranton. And then the stalking started up again. This went on for such a long time. So through the 80s, I just kept doing what I had to do. And I was like sneaking around, even though I was divorced, And I didn't finish the college. I got 2 years in. And then it was like just too much. So I went home, and I would have to take him back in order to get any peace in my life. And I would take him back. And then after a while, it would be like, oh, I can't. Did you ever try to live with somebody you can't stand? Never mind sleep in the same bed with them. And God forbid if they want to have sex. It was like too much. So I said, you have to go. Well, he didn't like that. He left, but then of course the stocking was there again. Like it was just round and round and round. So one day I was at a clam bake and I ran into my first husband. My first husband was a very attractive man, movie star, like James Caan when he was young. If you would know who James Caan is, really gorgeous. Um,
I
anyway,
watched The Godfather a couple of weeks ago. I know who James Caan is.
well, you know how handsome he was, right?
Yes, he's a good looking guy.
Very good. So that he was there, the chemistry was there. It had been 10 years, since we had been divorced. And we started seeing each other, but we had to do it like we were cheating, even though we weren't cheating. So after a while, he moved in with me. I kicked Bob out. He moved in with me. They actually fought over me physically, rolling around on the ground physically. And Bob saw this was a guy that wasn't going to go away. That's the only way I could get rid of him. So that's what I did. And I stayed with him, ironically, for 7 years. But he had not changed. Today they would call it a sex addict.
Mm.
And he had, they weren't even affairs. He would just sleep with any woman that was breathing. She didn't even have to be attractive. Okay. And I was like, this was like, give me a freaking break. And he didn't work and he drank. And I tried everything to make it work. I even bought a bar. I thought maybe if I buy a bar and he's in that surrounding, he could have his couple drinks and go home. And, no. He gave the place away. He wouldn't charge his friends for drinks. He would, I'd get a call from a bartender and he'd say, Jack left 3 hours ago and I have to go home. He would just leave the bar because he met some chick, And I found out a lot of things later too. So I said to him, you can't keep a job. You cheat on me and you're an alcoholic. And I got to tell you something. I'm pretty broad-minded. And you could stay home all day long and drink and I would keep you. But the cheating, I can't handle that. A woman, that's the one sin you cannot commit, at least in my mind. Be a lazy bum, be a drunk, okay. But cheat on me, that's all. So I caught him once too often. And the last time, I really had enough. And more details are in the book. It's very juicy. A lot of stuff happened. And I was single again, and I was going out, and I was having a great time. And I met my present husband, who I'm with 37 years. So it really means it was them, not me, because come on, I mean, if you want proof. And so we bought a bar together too. Now he was an alcoholic, but he was a functional alcoholic, as was I. I would never have called myself that. But I raised 2 children by myself. I went to college. I mean, I ran a business. How could I be an alcoholic? He was a school teacher. He helped run the business. How could he be an alcoholic? But I will say he did get caught driving under the influence a couple of times. And because it was Scranton and it mattered who you knew, and his brother was the DA, he did not get any DUIs. So he could stay in denial for a long time. I'm the one that hit a bottom, spiritual and physical and mental. And I put myself into treatment. And I was there for 28 days. And I got sober in 1991. So I'm sober since 1991. And then the journey went on, and we had a pretty good life. But when I got sober, I told my husband, we have to sell the bar. And he didn't understand that at all. He said, but I stopped drinking for you. I said, no, we have to sell the bar. And he resisted that. And I was told by the rehab, you are never to go in that bar again because when you're in that bar, you're the queen. You have your own special chair. You told us that at your throne. You're the queen. You sit there and run the place, which is true. It was true. So I was not supposed to do that. I would see somebody's car, know the person, and I'd run down and say hello. And when I'd go in, um, I would start telling people maybe they should go to rehab. and, my husband said, get out, you're bad for business.
Yeah, you're in sales prevention, right?
You're not just no. So we knew it wasn't going to work. We finally sold the bar. So that was good. And after that, we retired and we moved to Florida. Before we retired, and this is not in the book, so your listeners are getting a little bonus. My one daughter had married someone that when I met him, it was like, oh my God, he is her father and stepfather combined.
Oh, geez.
He was gorgeous. You just knew. Sure enough, he was a drug addict. And she was a very smart girl. She was going to college. And she got pregnant. And I said, don't get married. Do not marry him. Finish going to college. Let him live with you. Have your baby. Don't marry him. Okay. Well, she got pregnant again. She said, Mommy, and I brought her up Catholic. Mommy, I think we have to get married. I'm having another baby. And I really didn't want it to happen, but it did. And he must have went to rehab 60 times. I mean, when he was at a meeting, the chair would use him as an example. How he kept coming back and how he kept going to treatment. And he could quote the big book. If you know what the big book is, people, it's the AA big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. This is our Bible. And he could quote and say on page 222, it says this and everything, like a preaching. But then every once in a while, he would relapse. And he did drugs. He did the hard stuff. And when my grandson was 4 years old, my daughter had had enough and they were separated. And they had a daughter and a son, but he favored the son. And he said he would take the son on weekends. And he was supposed to be sober at the time. In fact, he was running the sober house. He was getting away with murder, this kid.
Sure, yeah.
I mean, people believed him. He was charming. Everybody loved him, but he was bad news. So he takes my little grandson and it's time for bed. And his father goes in the bathroom and he's in there a long time. So he went and he said, Daddy, Daddy, Daddy. The door was locked. And he went next door. He was smart enough to get the neighbors. They called the police. They took the door off the hinges and his father was dead.
Oh, no.
Overdose. He saw the needle in his arm, the towel wrapped around it, the foam coming out of his mouth. Yeah. And that's not in the book. Anyway, I tell you that because one important part of my story, just one part, addiction and alcoholism in this country and how rampant it is and devastating it is and how it affects everybody in the family, not just the addict. So that was a very hard time for us. And we had already moved to Florida. So what we did was we would come up for the summer and take care of the kids and help her out. We did that for a couple of years, And then we were enjoying our life. We retired early. We were 55. We were sober. We lived in West Palm Beach. He had a nice pension. Everything was rosy. And we went to the beach one day and my husband said to me, I think there's something wrong with me because my one hand keeps shaking, my left hand. And I said, well, maybe you have essential tremor. People get that. And no, he had Parkinson's. So I don't want to go too long. You cut me off anytime.
Nope, you keep going. It's your story.
And I'm trying to condense it. It's not easy. So we're talking about 7 years of story here.
Mm.
So anyway, he had Parkinson's and it was progressive type. And we went through that for a while. And then all of a sudden, I start getting different things wrong with me. I got breast cancer. I had a double mastectomy. I had an autoimmune disease that was not recognized. It was called Sjogren's. At the time, they called it Sjogren's syndrome. And they thought it was just your eyes got real dry. That's what they thought it was. No, it's actually an autoimmune disease that affects your entire body, which they're just finding out now. But I knew I had it because I did the research. So meantime, I'm getting breast cancer. I have that. I had two shoulder replacements, two knee replacements. I got a stomach infection that was so bad. I was in the hospital a whole summer. I almost died. That was 2015. And they could not find out what the infection was. They could not find out what antibiotic would fix it. And I mean, I cannot tell you how many antibiotics they had me in. And they'd take me off food for weeks. And I was being fed by a tube, and they wouldn't even let me have water. It was hell. And finally, they released me with a port in my chest, and I had to go for IV antibiotics every day. Well, I started getting sicker and sicker, and I finally found a doctor, and he said, I think I know what's going on. And he had me stand in front of an x-ray machine so that my husband and I could see what was happening. He said, take a drink of water. So I took a drink of water, and we watched it squirt out the side of my stomach.
Mm.
Okay. So then he said, very next day, emergency, exploratory endoscopy. He said, I just don't do a regular. I go all over the place. And then I'm going to have you come in the very next day. This is serious. And I did. And he said, I have good news and bad news. I said, okay. What's the bad news? I said, well, the bad news is you have fistulas and you have blockages all through your stomach, your intestines. And that means some food is leaking into your body instead of leaving. It's in your body. And some of it's actually in a dead end in your stomach since like 1984. You know, this is very dangerous. He said, but I can fix it. That's the good news. I said, okay. I said, well, how are you going to fix it? He said, well, I have to remove 85% of your stomach.
Yikes.
I know, right? I said, and that's the good news. So he said, you know, if you waited 2 more weeks, you would have been dead. Because the infection, that's why they couldn't fix it. Now, these doctors, I wanted to sue them. However, in Florida, attorneys will not take malpractice. They do not want to take it. You cannot find a lawyer to take this. So I wasn't able to sue them because they caused me a lot of pain and suffering and did a lot of damage. They punctured my lung during the procedure. Terrible. So anyway, this man, I went in the hospital. He took 85% of my stomach and part of my colon. And I was back. Here I am. Years later, I'm good. Look at me. I'm going to be 77 next month. Not bad. So I had a plethora of things health-wise. And from there, I found a lot of meaning in my life. I started to go to a church that really wasn't a church. It was a spiritual community. And I started to get into things like meditation and things like that. Listen to speakers like Deepak Chopra and Marianne Williamson and learn all about a different type of spirituality that had nothing to do with a big guy in the sky. Okay. Yeah. So now I was on a spiritual journey. And even before that, I was a sponsor for AA. And between Scranton and West Palm Beach, I sponsored well over 100 women. Well over. And I have quite a few women that are still sober today that have like 30 years or more, which makes me very happy. But I was a teacher. I made them do homework. That's, I think, great. And I just got a letter the other day from a woman that says, I'm still using your homework to sponsor women. So I want you to know you left a legacy.
That's awesome.
Oh, it was. It was so awesome. She said, I still have your workbooks and I use them. So, yeah, so then I got into more spiritual things. And 2020 came. And of course, we all have the same problem. Do we go outside or we stay in the house? What causes it? We don't know. We don't know what to do. And I have autoimmune disease. He has Parkinson's. We're going to stay in the house. So for 9 months, that's what we did. And I found out when I was in treatment that part of the reason I drank was I was self-medicating chronic depression and anxiety disorder. I didn't realize that. So once I found that out, and instead they put me on Zoloft, instead of having 8 Manhattans, I realized that I had some situations, and I did a lot of counseling for a lot of years. I did inpatient, outpatient, group counseling, individual counseling, retreats. I did everything. I worked on myself like hell. But 2020 threw me for a loop, and I knew I was depressed because I was mean to my husband. Now, here's this poor guy progressing with Parkinson's, and I'm being me. So I got help. And luckily, Zoom, thank God, that's when Zoom came really in handy. Nobody was really using it that much before. I got a counselor on Zoom, and I still have her 5 years later. And she is the one that said to me, you're a talker, no kidding. And your husband has Parkinson's at a certain time of the day. He sundowns. So like after 3 or 4 o'clock, he stops talking. And that was adding to my depression. And I couldn't leave the house, so I wasn't talking to anybody. She said, I think you should write a book. I said, I'm not a writer. She said, you don't know that. Sit down every day and write for an hour. Write your life story, whatever. So I did. I'd go in my room every day at 4 o'clock and I would write. And sometimes it'd be more than an hour because I'd get into it. Well, in 9 months, I wrote my story called Raised by Wolves, Trapped by Demons. And of course, the wolves were my parents because they taught me no coping skills.
Right.
I learned on myself the hard way. They gave me no love or support. And, they wanted to just take. And the men in the beginning were the demons. But then at some point, the demon became alcohol. Yeah. So the book is dark in the beginning. And then I've been told that it's gritty and there's a lot of resilience exemplified in how I handle things and get through these things. And then it gets lighter as I get on a more spiritual path and a more just soul searching, finding my way, what my purpose is. And that's why I started the podcast that I have, Be Heard, Empower Yourself, because now my mission is still to be a teacher, but I'm not teaching English. I'm teaching life skills. So that's the condensed version.
I love it. So I just kept thinking about, the old saying, other than that, how was the play, Mrs. Lincoln, right?
Oh my God, yes. I left all the juicy parts out,
Well, I know that they're in the book.
They are.
So there was a couple of things that you had written in your intro to us that I was very interested in because we haven't talked about these things necessarily at great length on the podcast. And like we talked about, our podcast is about purposeful. And so one of the things I try to do is the host is to, so we're fortunate. We attract really high caliber people like yourself. And so we can have good conversations, which is the
Yeah,
entire point of the
yeah.
podcast. But we try to bring on people that have all sorts of different views, all sorts of different ideas, all
Mhm.
sorts of different ways by which they impart the lessons they've learned in life to our audience. And you had talked about a couple of things in there: feminine identity, confinement, and self reclamation through visually rich and emotionally honest lens. And so I really appreciate you spending the time you did on your
Mhm.
life story. And
Mhm.
I definitely want to talk more about your book, but I want to talk about those subjects that I just listed out because in particular, the feminine identity part is something we haven't talked about. And you come from a very unique place in that you had very feminine experiences. I mean, clearly you're a woman. And you know, I know that should go without saying, but in today's society, I don't know that it does
Of
go without
course.
saying. But you had very feminine experiences, but then you were a bartender and you were exposed to the mafia and you were an alcoholic, which I get it. There's lots of women that can be alcoholics as well, but we tend to associate those behaviors largely with men. And so
Yes.
I just I'm interested in exploring those. So when you talk about feminine identity,
Mhm.
how do you have that conversation with people?
Well, things have changed a lot since the 60s. And through the decades, the feminine identity and what that actually was has been never well defined.
Mm.
It's been blurred, and it's also been defined by straight white men.
You're
And,
looking right at me when you say that.
well, you're a straight white man, as far as I know. And the thing of it is, women are supposed to, be quiet, be gentle, be beautiful, serve their husbands, have babies, get married, all these things, and we're not supposed to stand out in any way, things like this. And I was the age when Gloria Steinem and all the feminists came out. Burn your bra, and we didn't have the right to vote. And the girls today don't realize that in the early 60s women couldn't vote yet. Women weren't voting. In the 50s they weren't allowed to have a credit card in their name. Like, these are things that the women today, young women today, don't realize. We weren't allowed to have abortions. We had to have the baby. We had to either have the baby and put it in an orphanage or raise it. These were no choices. We had no choices over our bodies, over our finances, over our personality.
Mm.
That's huge, huge. And we fought. So we fought. And then, like, into the 70s, we really thought we were making some progress, the whole burn your bra thing. And we could vote, we could get credit cards. Now we were starting to feel like equals to men, but it was subterfuge. It was, not real. It was not real. And they used to talk about the glass ceiling, and, we're going to break through that glass ceiling. And after so many decades of that, and I was involved in that, I was involved in that personally and in a group way as a woman. And I did, by the way, finish going to college, and I did get a bachelor's degree. And it took me longer than it would have if I was a man. So we have these extra obstacles, okay? And just when we thought we cleared that glass ceiling, all of a sudden everything started to go backwards. The Roe versus Wade that said we were allowed to have abortion got rescinded, got nullified. That was something that no one expected, at least in my opinion. That
Mm.
was a big blow for women. They had finally said that gay men could get married. Well, guess what? They're they're changing the vote on that, the law in a lot of states. Okay. And my minister's a gay man. And he couldn't get married to his spouse for a long time. And when he was allowed to, it was a big deal. And now they're taking it away again. Right. And there's so much going on. And everybody knows it. It's out in the open. And a lot of stuff. Can I curse on the show?
Yeah, that's what the salty is. Salty is because I curse like a sailor.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, the shit's about to hit the fan. Okay? Because it is going to come out that the straight white man thing is not a myth. Okay. That all of these things that are happening now are going to prove it. And it's going to be very, how can I put this? I see a lot of violence and a lot of upsetting things happening in the next 5 to 10 years. Okay. Possibly even civil war. I know that sounds extreme, but if you live in the South, it's really not. And so that's my thing on feminine identity is that I did a lot of things in my life that broke the stereotype of the feminine identity. Okay. I ran the bar. I ran the bar I owned with my first husband. I ran the bar that I owned with my second husband. You know, I did a lot of things that were considered masculine. I did it myself. I mean, when my husband and I, my present and forever husband, when we got our bar, the accountant didn't have the taxes ready. And I called him and I said, "How far did you get?" This was like the first year we had it. He said, "Well, I have your your name, your address, your social security. I have the form that part filled in." I said, "You're fired. You're fired." And my husband said, "What did you do?" I said, "I had 2 years of accounting. We don't need an accountant. I'm your accountant." Like I still am. If I believe something, it comes out, I just tell you. I tell you the way it is. I don't work around. Do you know? Very
Yep.
outspoken. I was on the board of a couple of nonprofits. I was on the board for my church. And I was very outspoken about certain things. And some of the more conservative people did not like that. And to me, it was like so obvious. Like things would get said and done, and they weren't voted on. And I'd raise my hand and I'd say, "We didn't vote on that." Like you're supposed to vote on those things, right?
Mm.
They didn't like that. So because of me, they had to start, had to make a motion. It had to be seconded, it had to be voted on. I mean, it's amazing to me how things could just go on. And if nobody says anything, nothing changes. Well, I'm a changer. I'm a changer. And I recently did a couple sessions with a spiritual guide. And when you're Catholic growing up, you're told you have guardian angels. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up with that. So the only difference here is they're not called guardian angels, they're called my spirit guides. And they've been with me through birth. And I learned some very interesting things that even if I never believed that this could happen, things were said that I went, "Oh my God, this is real. This is real," you know? So I'm exploring parts of my past lives. And some people do believe that you can be born more than once. I don't know where you are with that, but the Buddhists believe it.
We've had several people on the channel that have talked about past lives and reincarnation.
Yes.
And I view my role as the host as a facilitator. So I tend not to inject my own personal thoughts or like it's not my place. It's this like you know what I mean? We're not
Yeah.
60 minutes. It's not my job to do gotcha. I ask clarifying questions. That's all I tend to do.
Yeah.
But
So, yeah.
for what it's worth, I think there's different versions of it. Like when you think about the finite amount of carbon or aluminum or tin or iron or whatever, there are absolutely cells in your body that have been in someone else's body at some point in human history before. And
Yes.
I tend to think reincarnation is probably more likely than unlikely. That's the way I think about
There
it.
you go. Okay, good. Yeah, so I have a very open mind because
Mm,
nobody knows what happens when you die.
that's right.
They don't come back and say, "Oh, guess what happened? I died, and here's what happened." No, some people think they did. I'm skeptical about the people that think they died and came back and have a story. Um, because I'm going through different paths of self discovery, even at my age. I am not done exploring who I am. Okay. And that brings me to the second book I wrote, which I'll talk about. My dad was adopted. My dad was lied to by his adopted father. His adopted father told him that he was his real father. Yeah. And that his biological mother, an Irish woman, put him in the orphanage. And he took him out of the orphanage. And he was Sicilian. So my father grew up thinking that he was Sicilian and he did not want to recognize the mother. In fact, he hated the Irish because that was his mother that put him in the orphanage.
Mm.
Now, the little trick in that story, when I grew up and I was old enough to think about it, I was thinking, why did he wait till he was 4 years old to adopt him? Like that? Oh, yeah. Now, I didn't do it until my father died, but then I did the DNA ancestry. And when it came back, it said, your father is 100% Irish. Now, my mind, my type of research type, I have to know the details. I went back to the 18th century in County Mayo, Ireland, and I tracked both sides of my family on my father's side, the mother and the father. And they both came from County Mayo, Ireland, and their families both migrated to Scranton, Pennsylvania. And I was able to find out that my father had a half brother who lived 6 blocks away our whole lives, and they
Wow.
never knew each other. And they were both alcoholics, and they were born the same year. The one was born with the man's wife, and the other was born with the illegitimate situation.
Mm.
So I had to write a book on that. That's a movie. I just had to do that. And that one's called Unearthing My Irish Roots. Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm super Irish. I know it's hard to tell by looking at me. And when you said when, when you when you said they was Irish and alcoholic, I'm like, that's kind of redundant, isn't it? Like,
Yeah, it is. It actually is. Yeah. My husband's CIA,
mm,
Catholic Irish alcoholic. Yeah.
yeah,
But I don't look Italian at all.
yeah, right.
He would say to me, "You don't look Italian." But yeah, and that became a very interesting story because the man that is my grandfather, biologically my grandfather, was like 30 years old when my biological grandmother had my father, and she was 15.
Mm,
So I think she was raped.
yeah.
And in those days, again, they would probably put her somewhere till she had the baby. And then,
Send her off to a convent
yeah,
or yeah,
yeah,
right. Yep.
yeah. And we had one called St. Joseph's right there in Scranton, well, in Dunmore, which is next to Scranton. And there was an orphanage there, and that's what they did there. And that's where my father was. And that's, like, so that makes an interesting story. So what I did with that book is I call it a semi fictional historical book. Why? Because all the names are true. It's like, what was that show? All the names and places are true. Um, the Naked City or whatever it was. Anyway,
Oh yeah, yeah. I remember that.
so all the names, the marriages, the birth dates, the years, the places, every single thing that I researched is fact, which I have proof of. But I don't know what my ancestor did for a living
Mm.
in 1722. So I made up a story for each one of them.
Ah,
And once I got to the 20th century, then I knew what they did. And then they, yeah. So I like the way it came out. I really do.
That's very cool. That's very cool.
Yeah, I'm sort of a unusual writer.
No, I love that. I have a couple of questions about you had said in the 60s women weren't allowed to vote. How did that work?
What do you mean, how did it work? You weren't allowed to vote.
Well, so the reason I ask is that women were given the right to vote in 1919. However, what you're saying is they couldn't vote in the 60s, and I'm wondering what, like, how did that work? How were they
I don't
stopped
remember.
from voting?
I don't have the details off the top of my head, but there was a point where they were not allowed to vote. And I think it was the same type of thing where it was taken away from them, you know. But
Mm.
even if they were allowed to vote in 1919, why weren't they allowed to vote before 1919?
No, no, yeah, I'm not totally get it. So I actually know quite a bit about that whole thing, and I'm
I
not
could be
looking.
wrong. I could be totally wrong about that. But I have to go back and look at my notes because for some reason I do believe it happened. So I'm going to have to say
No,
that.
that's okay. Because like the reason I ask is because blacks were given the right to vote, 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment, but in reality, they couldn't vote because there were poll taxes and there were literacy tests and there were ways to disenfranchise them. That's why I was asking the question. I was curious if those types of situations.
Yeah,
I was born in 1972, so I hadn't heard what you said before, and I was asking out of curiosity, not to try to
yeah,
debate it.
yeah,
Just
after the
yeah.
showing, I have to go look it up. Well, again, a woman. Okay, let's say she's allowed to vote. She's going to vote the way her husband tells her to vote. I mean, then, you
Yeah,
know,
no, I get it, and I have no actual experience to draw from because it was before my time. So
yeah.
I'm not disputing or debating
Well,
what you're talking about.
women were, even before my time, women were made to think that men were the boss and they were smarter and they were more experienced about life. And we did not know enough. Now, it wasn't until the 60s when I was a teenager that women started to say, no, we're just as smart as men. You know, I mean, in my experience, that's how I felt. If you look at any of the shows on TV in the 50s, what do they show? The man going to work with the briefcase, the wife staying home vacuuming the rug in high heels and a dress. I
Hmm.
mean, really? I mean, really? I don't know about you, but that's not how you clean your house.
I think, yeah, I think it was Bewitched.
That's one
Uh,
of them.
that was
Mhm.
the first show to show a man and like a husband and wife in bed at the same time. Like even like Leave It to Beaver and Dobie Gillis, like when they showed couples in their bedroom, they showed them in twin beds apart from each other.
I Love Lucy. They had twin beds.
Yeah, that's right.
And I Love Lucy. She was, you know, she was a dumb broad. And you
And she
know,
was the star of the show. It was her show.
oh
It
yeah.
wasn't Desi Arnaz or I Love Ricky. It was I Love Lucy.
But the whole thing that we were fed when I was growing up, we were fed by the TV, which was a new invention. You know, when it came out, it was fairly new when I was a child of 8 years old, let's
Mm.
say, you know, the 50s. It was kind of new. And we'd sit there and we'd watch the Donna Reed show and we'd watch uh, My Three Sons and all these shows. And very, very male is the boss. Males, they run the world. They run the country. They run the world. And the little woman stays home and cooks. But the thing that always cracked me up is that she did it in high heels. I can never get over.
Well, so I'm curious what like the generation that's coming of age now and moving into the adult world, both male and female, they are waiting much longer to get into relationships. They're having much less sex. They're drinking less. They're smoking less. They're more isolated. What do you think is driving? And it's both male and female. Like both genders are following similar paths. Why do you think that
Well,
is?
I have three grandsons and a granddaughter.
Mm,
They're all in their mid 20s.
yep.
So I can tell you real facts here. They're not smoking, they're vaping.
Yeah. True.
Vaping is worse than smoking. You know, pot is a big thing more
Yep.
than alcohol. They'd rather have pot. As far as dating, it's nothing like it ever was in any generation. Everything is on the internet. Uh, they meet people on the internet. They go to TikTok or they go to, Instagram and they put videos up. And there have been some situations where people have met nice people on the internet, but it's very dangerous. I personally know people a little older than the 20 year olds that have sent money to people and I'm like, oh, don't you understand? He's never gonna come here from India. No. You say, oh, I have to get my visa and I need $100 and I love you and I can't wait to see you. And this girlfriend of mine, she used to put me on the phone with him. I don't know. I don't want to be on the phone. She'd have him on FaceTime and say, oh, well, Mimi, you look so beautiful. And I go, yeah, okay. And she had to, a couple of years of giving him money and sending him a computer and doing all this stuff. And she just didn't get it. She was like fantasy world. But back to the 20-year-olds, I have the boys I see, my grandsons anyway, are very motivated, very motivated. One wants to be an actor. And I told him, you have to go to either LA or New York City because he lived in Wilmington, North Carolina.
Mm,
Very handsome, gorgeous, very good actor. I saw him in a lot of theater, did a lot of theater. He moved to New York City and he has two jobs. He got an apartment and he has already gotten a couple acting jobs. Now, to me, that's great. Girls, he doesn't have time for girls right now. He's motivated. Okay. My 16-year-old grandson, brilliant, honor roll, honor society. He was born missing fingers on his left hand. So he decided he would be a jock, an athlete. That's what he did since he was like 3 years old. And he was good at soccer, baseball, anything. Right now, he is a star pitcher on his high school team and his baseball travel league that goes up and down the East Coast. Okay. They call him the Iron Claw because he pitches. Okay. He pitches with his left hand and he can bat with either his right or left hand. And he pitches at 90 miles an hour.
wow. Good for him.
Yeah. And he has all the scouts approaching him now, at least 4 colleges. And this is his senior year coming up, and he will be given an offer. They didn't talk money, show me the money. They didn't do that. They're showing them the campuses and telling them they're interested. And he plays the stock market and he makes money. And he said, Nana, buy this one stock and don't tell anybody what it is. I said, okay. I don't do stock market. He told me what app to go on. I bought this one stock. I said, I'll do $100. Within 4 weeks, it was $250 that I had in my account, right? And I'm just leaving it there. I'm just leaving it there. But he makes money and then puts it in the bank. And then he buys a different stock and he makes money on that one and puts it in the bank. This boy, but guess what? Up until this year, I'd say, do you have a girlfriend? I don't have time for girlfriends. I got school, I got sports, I don't have time for a girlfriend. What I'm getting at there is these boys, the ones that are intelligent, okay, they're not dating because they're motivated and ambitious. Now, the ones that aren't motivated and ambitious, they're sitting there in their mother's basement vaping and on video games. It's black and white. There's no gray. I'm not kidding. I've seen it. And at my oldest, I was afraid was going to be sitting in the basement vaping for a long
Mm.
time. But he met a girl and he fell in love. And you know what she did? She moved into the basement with him. And his mother liked her. And after 2 years, she got him to get an apartment with her. And they're doing wonderful. Okay. So it's not like any decade you've ever seen.
Yeah, for sure.
It's either you're motivated or you're not motivated. It's just different. And it's because of the internet, which can be a good thing or a bad thing.
Yeah. One of the things, so I have three, my wife and I have three sons. We've been married for 32 years and we have three adult sons. So they're 30, 27, and 25. And our youngest son is engaged. He's getting married next August. But the older two are not, and they're not dating anyone right now. But I think there are, you just said like internet, call it technology in general. It has its benefits, but it has its drawbacks too. And so I'm 53, so I was born in 1972. And when I was of dating age, if I wanted to take a girl out, I had to make arrangements to call her. And then I had to call her home phone. There were no cell phones, there was no any of that other jazz that existed now. And I had to be prepared for anyone to answer. And if her dad answered, I had to get through her dad to talk to her,
Yeah.
because the dad could say, no, you're not taking my daughter out, hang up the phone. And that was that.
Yeah.
And so I had to learn to present myself in a respectable way to her father or to her mother.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that things have become much more transactional now. And I don't think it's better for our society the way
No,
things are now.
no,
And
it's not.
look, I had my share of fun and all that other jazz. I'm not saying I was an angel and I just, read the Bible until I met my wife. That's not what I'm saying at all. However, I never thought about like taking a picture of my private parts and sending it like a Polaroid and sending it to her and saying, "Hey, look what I got for you," or the all this other jazz that goes on now. To me, I think that technology has allowed. The other thing it has allowed is I think the world was a better place when it was hard for a man to see a naked woman. Like it used to be a really rare thing. You would get like, "Holy cow! I just saw that lady's breasts." That was
Uh-huh.
really a big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's not the case anymore. And I think it's really diluted what those moments mean to people. And I don't think it's good for us.
No, it's not. It can be a good thing or a very bad thing. And then there's stuff I don't even want to know about the internet. When they talk about the dark internet and stuff, I don't even want to know. I don't want to know how to get there. Don't even tell me how to get there. I don't need to know, you know. But I just think that again, there's a lot of factors. It has a lot to do with parenting. Even though my parents, I don't think were good parents, they did teach me work ethic.
Mm,
They did teach me honesty. They did teach me a lot of moral principles. Maybe they didn't do it in a loving way, but I saw now with my children, my husband and I, we told them when they were teenagers, we buy you everything you need, food, clothes, whatever. But if there's something you want that's not a necessity, get a job.
mm,
At 16 years old, all three of our girls had jobs. Wendy's, KFC,
sure.
wherever. But that's what we did. Guess what? They grew up, they had children, and they didn't do that. What happened there?
Right.
What I don't get that, but they didn't. They buy them what they want. They gave them like designer stuff, whatever. They never had to work for it, you know. So now that word comes out, entitled,
Mm,
entitlement. So I
yeah.
think a lot of 20, 25-year-olds had that sense of entitlement.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's at least that's the way I see it as well. I see what you see there as well. You had talked, I was curious. Being a bartender and owning and working in bars for a
Mhm.
lot of your life, what's your favorite story from your time spent working in bars?
There's so many.
Pick a good one and tell it to us.
They're all good. Well, when I was married to the crazy person, the bouncer,
Yeah.
he finally let me have this one little job, which was to be a coat check girl, which younger people won't know what that is. But it's to come in the bar and it's winter time and you don't want to like put your coat on the chair so you might take it, whatever. So they have this little room and you can check your coat, and then you have a tip jar. And when they get their coat, they tip you. So that was a way for him to have me right under his nose. You know what I mean? And it was in the 70s. And the bar I worked in was a disco place. It had the crystal ball and everything, the dance. It was John Travolta. And it was a happening place. And we had a lot of gay people that came. And the one night this guy came in who during the day he dressed as a man, but at night he dressed as a woman and painted nails and everything. And I was good friends with him. So I was sitting at the bar having a drink, and we both had to go to the bathroom. So we went to the ladies' together. And I wasn't in there 2 minutes, and a girl came in and said, "Who's Marie?" I said, "I am." "Well, you better get out here because your husband's having conniptions out here because you're in here with, he said, "You're in here with a man." I came out, I said, "Wow. When so and so is dressed like that, he's not a man, he's a woman, and he's not interested in women." And so but that tickled me to this day. How upset he. That's one story. Um, we had a wet T-shirt contest in my bar. That was a big deal. And in order to have the wet T-shirt contest, we had to get like a kid's swimming pool and put it on this little stage.
Sure.
The girls would dance and get water poured on them. And of course, they'd have on no bra. So their boobs and all would show through their wet T-shirts. And
Sure.
then,
What's the point if you're not doing it that way?
and then we had a winner. And the one time I entered the contest myself. And well, I was drinking then. And there was a guy, crazy man, and his daughter was one of our regular customers. She wasn't there that night. And this girl had big breasts. Okay. But she was not there that night. Well, he came to the bar and the bar was packed because when you have an event like that, you draw.
Sure. Yeah. Right.
And he was like ready to punch my husband in the face and he was acting up and everything else. And my husband kept saying, "She's not here. She's not here." He got so incensed. One last thing. We lived upstairs in the bar. And my husband would go away on like a fishing trip or a camping trip with his brothers once a year. And I would be home with three girls alone. So the one night I heard yelling, and I went out on the second floor porch and I looked down and one of our tenants was getting beat. What do you call it when you hit them with a gun? This
Oh,
word.
pistol whipped. Yeah.
Pistol whipped. He was getting pistol whipped. There was a girl there, and the guy was, and I yelled and I said, "Hey, I'm going to call the cops." And he took the gun and he pointed it at me.
Oh, good Lord.
So I said, "Okay, I'm calling the cops," but I like backed into the house.
Yeah. Right.
And you have to realize Scranton, there were four sections of Scranton. There was South Side, West Side, North Side, East Side. And if you lived in Southside, you knew everybody in Southside. Okay.
Yep.
I lived in Southside. The bar was in Southside. This guy was from Southside. So of course I could tell the police who he was. Right. And him and his friends paid me not to be with us. Okay. And the last one, I'll tell you, this is hysterical. This drug addict, and his name was Bozo.
Like the clown?
Bozo Brennan. That was his name. It just so happened my husband was out of town again. I hear noise. I look out the second floor window, and there he is trying to get into the bar, into a window with a butter knife or something, trying to get it open. And I went, Bozo, what are you doing? He looks at me, and I said, I know who you are. I don't think you should continue this activity. I know who you are. So he left. I called the police, and the police said to me, we can't do anything because he's not here now. I said, I have 3 teenage girls in this house, and you're not going to do anything. And I know who he is. But that was Scranton. That's what it was in that decade. You know, that stuff went on. I had guns pulled on me. I stopped a man from shooting his girlfriend. Uh, yeah, I was in the Hotel KC. It was jammed, and he came in, and he was connected. He wasn't mafia, but he was connected.
Yeah.
And I was really good friends with him. And I was behind the bar, and it was really busy. And the ex-girlfriend he just broke up with was there, gorgeous girl, and another guy. And he came in. This is in my book. And I knew he had a gun in his pocket. I just felt it. I knew. I got out from behind the bar, and I went up to him, and I whispered in his ear, and I said, Jimmy, I know you have a gun in your pocket. He goes, yeah, I'm going to kill that bitch. I said, I'm not going to do it here. You're not going to do it on my watch. And I got him to leave. I was afraid of nothing.
Yeah, those are some crazy, crazy situations.
And I have a lot more. A lot. A lot. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Well, so you let's talk about your writing now. Do you find it therapeutic to write books, or what is it about writing books that you enjoy? What makes you do it?
I think the first one was very cathartic in that even though I had gone through decades of counseling and everything, I found some lessons in there. And in fact, in writing that book, I would actually stop in a chapter. And that's why people said it's like I was talking to them personally. I would stop and I'd say, now I know why that happened. And I would go into a principal psychology of something and explain that. So that was a really deep book to write. The second book was the historic, the research of it was exhilarating because I was a detective. Now I'm a detective.
Mm.
I'm finding things out that nobody else knows in my family. Nobody went back, 500 years to find out the beginnings, that kind of thing. The third book I wrote, I don't talk about that much. It's a workshop for surviving trauma. And what I will tell you about that is I was gearing it towards women, thinking about my own trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I don't think I said this. We've been talking so long. I hope I didn't say it. I hate to repeat myself. But I was at a wedding. Did I tell you about the 16-year-old boy?
No.
No. Okay. So I was at a wedding after I wrote the first book, and I was working on this workbook for surviving trauma. And my grandson wanted me to meet his two friends. And I went over to where they were sitting. And I said, I'm Nick's grandmother. And the one boy said hello. And the other boy turned around, blushing, and said, I can't believe this is happening right now. And I'm like, did Taylor Swift just walk in? Like, what is going on? He looked at me and he said, are you Condomini? Which is my internet name on all the social media. And I said, yes, I am. Nick came running over laughing. He said, Nana, he's your biggest fan. He bought your first book, he read it, and he follows you on Instagram. Well, I went home and I thought to myself, a 16-year-old boy
Mm.
relates to something in me, in my life, in what I'm putting out there. I threw the draft for that workbook away and I changed it and geared it towards men, women, LGBTQT, whatever, for everybody. He made that effect on me. And in the acknowledgement, I said, I dedicate this book to blank blank. I won't say his name out loud. I don't want to embarrass him.
Mm.
I dedicated to him that book. And he was like a big cheese at school for months.
Ah.
Dedicated a book to him. And then this last one, I told you about the mystical guide and the spirit guides, looking into that, and the fact that I have had very unbelievable illnesses and things happen to me. And there is a theory in New Wave spirituality that says we are not the only living things in the universe. And you're very egotistical to think that. This one guy in 1976 wrote a book, Age of Aquarius, that said there is a planet up there that felt sorry for us because it looked down and they were very evolved in every way above us and said, those people are killing themselves. We got to help them. And they sent down what we call star seeds. Okay. And what this was just like you plant flowers. The star seed would land in a person. And in that person, it would bloom and evolve and help that person become the best version of itself so that they could then help humanity. All right. So what I did, oh, this is juicy. Wait to hear this one. My mother tried to abort me. And I know that because she wrote it in a book and left it to me after she died in a diary.
Mm.
Lovely. She knew I was going to take this book because it was a book I gave her to write things for me. And she said that she took mustard baths and jumped up and down the steps and everything. I think, oh, how nice that you're going to tell me that. So I think I put this into my head. A star seed saved my life. A star seed went into that fetus and saved my life. The book, this is where it gets juicy. It's a paranormal medical mystery. The paranormal is, am I a star seed? Okay. The medical is all the crazy medical stuff I need, unbelievable stuff in my life. And then the mystery is you find out at the end if I'm a star seed. But I think I love that. That just to me was like, I like that. I wrote that, Anatomy of an Alien. And I just published.
That's awesome. Yeah. And look, I mean, mathematically, there absolutely has to be life, quite a bit of life out in the universe.
And my whole life is about helping people. And my mother did try to kill me. And what if a star seed saved my life for real? Like this could be a movie. You know, they make movies like this all the time. And the fact that I went through all this, helping people in AA, you know, all the things I've done in my life to help people. I did what I was supposed to do as a star seed. And then I don't know I'm a star seed until the end of the book, if I am. So that got some pretty good reviews. But guess what happened, Joe? That's your first name, right, Joe?
It is.
After talking all this stuff. I published the book, and 2 weeks later, I needed to get a reverse shoulder replacement, right? And I might need some kind of surgery in my hips. And I went, wait a minute, like that's 2 more chapters.
You need to publish a revision.
I wasn't done. They're taking more body parts off me. You have to republish.
Do you think you'll keep writing books?
Right now, people ask me that, but with the podcast and the YouTube show, that takes a lot of my time. And I will be very honest with you, I reach more people that way.
Yeah.
People don't read, but they listen. And every time I talk to a young woman, 20s, 30s, doctor's office, waitress, wherever, and I tell them what I do and everything, I always say to them, do you read? And if they say yes, I go, do you do it on your phone or do you get a physical book?
Mm.
Or do you listen to it on Audible? And sometimes they say no, but I like podcasts. I listen to podcasts all the time. So I just want to reach more people. So I
Yeah.
think for now, I'm going to stick with that, with the podcasts and, the YouTube show.
What's your podcast called?
Be heard, empower yourself, of course. And I will tell you one thing though. I had a review on the book, The Irish Book, and the man put on Amazon, he said, I am a professional genealogist. And this book is very well written and very well researched.
Wow, that's a high compliment.
I would say so.
Yeah.
Yes.
What do you do on your podcast? Do you interview people? Do you talk? Like, what describe your podcast to us?
The podcast is about overcoming obstacles and becoming the person that you want to be, or, finding your vision in life and accomplishing that. And it's very varied. It is, you won't see the same thing. I had a wraparound one time. I have a skincare specialist that she was like, not a rocket science, but she was chemical engineering or something, and left that field to develop her own skincare business. And she's in Portugal. So I interviewed her from there, so that's totally different. Then I interviewed a transgender woman, and just, you never know. It's always different. And sometimes it's serious, sometimes it's fun. Uh, I have fun, and I was finding in the beginning, there's websites you go to where you can find people to come on. But now that I have so many episodes, I'm getting PR people reaching out to me and say, you have my client on your show. That's a good sign.
Yeah, it's crazy. I know when that started happening with us, I was like, hey, like, you contacted, right? Like I run a business that operates grocery stores and I do the podcast because I like doing it. You understand like who you're. They're like, oh no, yeah, we know your podcast. We want to get our people on there.
Well, they see how many views you're getting, they see how many episodes. And I've been told that I'm just a natural, like I'm a talk show host. I mean, I just am good at interviewing,
Mm.
you know. And I've been told that by my guests who afterwards they say, "Oh, we go on podcasts where they just have us talk and they don't ask any questions." Or you did a good job. You were interviewing us, and you knew when to stop with one thing and start another. And yeah, so I'm enjoying that part. And now I went through branding, marketing, and now I am on monetization.
All right, I like it.
So this is my plan, Yeah. I
Yeah,
like
that's very cool. I love. So my favorite thing that you've said during our interview is you said you're approaching 77, but you're not done figuring out who you are. And I think that is such a good approach for anyone at any stage in life. And I want to call it out because there's so many people that get set in their ways, and so many people think I've made these decisions and now I have to follow this path no matter what. And it's just not true. And I
no,
think you're a great example through your story of all the things that have happened in your life. And even now, with all of those things, it'd be very easy for you to say, hey,
I do
I got,
not.
yeah, I've got a ton of experience under my belt. It's time to kick up my feet and coast a little bit. And that's not where you're at. And I love that.
No, no, because my message is being received, you know. I'm being heard, and other people are being heard because of that, and being validated. There's a lot of validation on my show, and I've had a few men on. It's not all women. I've had some male guests on too, and you never know. You just well, you go on your phone right now and you'll see I have 135 episodes.
Mm.
And there's not one that looks alike. They're so different. So I enjoy that. I enjoy that a lot.
Yeah, I love that. And that's my favorite part about me doing my podcast is meeting people, like being able to, I learn so much from our guests and I learn from their experiences and we get to expose our audience to a wide variety of stuff. And that's what I tell our audience all the time is it doesn't matter if you agree with it or don't agree with it, just absorb it. Why would you not want to have all this information by which you can look at the world, make your decisions, figure out what it is you want to focus on in your life?
Mhm.
Why would you not want that? And so that's what I love about doing the podcast.
Yeah. And I'll have you one last story. We'll wrap it up. Um, my oldest grandson, he is a UPS driver and he never calls. They text. That's the thing these days. Text. You don't call, you text. So he actually called me, which is amazing. And he said, Nana, I got to tell you something. I said, what, Joey? And this is the one that was with his father when he died.
Mm.
He said, I'm driving the truck and I have my iHeart radio or whatever, there's all different podcast stations and I'm on all of them. He said, I have a podcast thing on. And all of a sudden I went, is that my grandmother? He's up in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
I thought that was great.
Yeah. I love that. I love that.
I really feel that my grandkids are very proud of me. I do. And you don't always get that. You don't always get that, respect and that kind of feelings from your grandkids. I know how I was with my grandparents, and they didn't make a big impression on me. Like, we have to go there again.
Yeah, my favorite memory of my grandfather. So I went through college on a baseball scholarship. So when you were talking about your grandson, that's the baseball guy.
Yeah.
I appreciated those stories. But my grandmother passed away from breast cancer, which metastasized to bone cancer, and she was very young. She was 56, and so he was by himself, and it was right when I kind of got into I'd always been playing baseball, but we were older and we were bigger and we were a good team and we were traveling up and down the West Coast. This was before travel baseball existed, but we kept winning tournaments and advancing to the next tournament. And my grandfather was trying to figure out what to do because his wife had just passed away. And so he followed our team up and down the West Coast. And I always appreciated being able to see my grandfather in the stands. It just is a great memory for me. He passed away a long time ago from heart failure, but just those are memories. Those are just great memories I have of my grandfather. So yeah, I love family. It's funny, as you become older, family becomes more and more important to you. At least it does for me. And you realize those are the people that actually really care about you and will actually be there when you need them. And I place a lot of value on that.
Yeah. Well, one that I do want to put a little plug in for Nick. Nick is in a contest right now for the best teenage baseball player in the United States. And they're going to have it in Sports Illustrated. And they'll win $25,000. Right now, he's in fourth place. Okay. So on the internet, on Facebook, I'm Mimi Tallow. Real simple, Mimi Tallow. Go and vote for my grandson.
There you go. Let's do it.
Go and vote because it's only like another week or so, and I would be tickled if he won that.
That'd be great for the recognition and the 25 grand.
Yeah, Mimi Tallow. Remember that. Go there, vote for Nick.
Love it. Love it. That's a great place. Great place for us to end on. So Mimi, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Really enjoyed our conversation. Really love it. Make sure you send us the links to your book so we can put them in the show notes so people can find those very easily. Make sure you go vote for Mimi's grandson, Nick. Find her, Mimi Tallow, on Facebook. And really appreciate you coming on the podcast.
I loved it. Thank you. We could talk for hours. All right.
Thanks, Mimi.
Have a good night.
Yeah, you too. Okay, guys. So that was Mimi. She did a great job. Loved hearing her stories. Crazy, all the experiences that she's had in her life. And really appreciate her kind of walking everybody through that. Loved her sharing her perspectives and her experiences. Loved her talking about her grandkids and her podcast. And remember, make sure you go to Mimi Tallow Facebook and vote for her grandson Nick on that Sports Illustrated contest for the baseball players. And it would be great if we're able to push them over the top when you do that. So thank you, Mimi, so much for coming on the program. Loved having you on. Loved our conversation. You did a great job. James puts it up over here every day. Head over to our website, saltygingertalk.com. Podcast episodes there. Social media account links are there. Newsletter we publish every weekday. You can subscribe to there. Make sure you like, share, comment, subscribe to the podcast, whatever platform you consume it on. We're going to keep having awesome people on. They're going to keep giving you great tips and what they've learned from life to help you build the life you want. You don't want to miss any of that great stuff. So make sure you catch our next episode. We will see you there.